today I guess I wanted to talk more about all of the things we bring with us. Like
Right.
what actually goes into being a mobile food cart, not even a food trailer, because
Right.
it's just or a food truck. There's just different levels of severity to it, and some are arguably harder than others depending on the perspective.
Well, what's interesting there, if we can consciously contrast as we talk about that, is the contrasted over the years, right? Like, so when we talk about how we started, what we brought quickly that first, time, brand new, never mind the experience of burning out our steam pans, but what we brought day one versus what we bring now. We used to pack 2 cars and 3 coolers and everything, and now we fit everything into 1 car, and yet we have probably a more efficient, higher quality setup and output,
Right. Yeah, I mean, if we start at year one, our cart was about 4 or 5 feet smaller in length. We literally ordered it in April, and it got delivered in May, and our first day opening was the day after Memorial Day. So that's how quick the trigger got pulled from being actually approved to go out with a permit through the park district. I remember that year we would bring, I think, 2 different tables. We used an iPad with our square.
And so we give a quick tidbit too, just more inspiration for people just to start stuff. When we did the application and when we got
We didn't even have the equipment.
We didn't have the equipment. We didn't have a car. We knew a place where we could order it, but we didn't have any of that figured out. Because also we knew if we didn't get a permit, well, what would be the point of having any of that figured out, right?
Right. What are we going to spend thousands
like,
on for if we can't even have a place to sell food without getting shut down?
Shoot your shot at that stuff first, and then you can figure all that stuff out. So.
Yeah. I mean, I literally charged a credit card to buy the, what was it, like $5,300
for the hot dog cart.
For the hot dog cart.
Yeah.
Came with 2 steam tables, came with a sink so we could have running water, and it came with a griddle. So we had the ability to expand our menu beyond things that we just steam.
Right.
And then from there, we just started purchasing a bunch of shit. I mean, like I purchased a card on my card, and then Mike used his card to purchase all the miscellaneous shit. So all in, we probably put in 10 to 12 grand on equipment and supplies that we thought we needed to get out there and get started.
Right.
Anything from food supplies to utensils to containers to extra pans, different dimensions, quarter pans, 6 pans, just without putting too much thought into it. A Chicago hot dog has a lot of condiments on it.
Right.
There's 6 slots for that alone, in addition to ketchup and mustard bottles and then the celery salt. So just that alone, when someone orders a Chicago hot dog, you need to have all those condiments ready. It's not like the South. It's not like Tennessee. It's not like a mustard and onion. It's not a sauerkraut thing.
Yeah.
It's a whole salad on your hot dog.
Yeah, literally run it through the garden, as they say.
Right. So it's a matter of having all that stuff ready, keeping it cold, and then that year one we didn't have a condiment prep station, so we were literally going and getting these tiny condiment trays that you would see on a bar, and trying to have 6 different condiments. We would run out so fast and have to refill so frequently, all in an attempt to keep it covered, keep it on ice, but it just wasn't a long-term solution. We didn't have a condiment station like I mentioned, so we would put it on a table that you just unfold it like at a picnic, and we would be bending over approximately 1 foot to 2 foot just to make hot dogs. So our lower back would be killing after that.
With our backs to the customer, to the side of the customer, it's
right.
a nice setup in that sense either.
Because there was no area on the cart to face the customer and make their food. So the socialization aspect, was pretty much non-existent, along with the ability to just stand upright and make food. It just wasn't an ideal situation. We would bring an easy up tent, one of the cheap $80 tents from Walmart, the ones that collapse and expand so fast. The first year I remember a gust of wind took that thing halfway down the block.
Mm-hmm. And it literally bent because we figured out how to keep it in place, but it just wasn't strong enough to withstand not bending from the wind, even though it didn't go anywhere.
And that's the pro to con of being on our corner. We're on an open corner where there's no residential areas. So we're in between 2 parking lots that are pretty busy during Sox games. But it's also wide open. There's nothing to block you from the wind. So it's one of the windiest corners around. Any open corner like that, you're going to catch wind. Especially when you're by the lakefront. We're probably a mile and a half away. But yeah, going off of that, we brought a lot of different shit. We bring multiple coolers, 2 cars, drinks, backup drinks. Before we had a cooler cage on the cart, we had the cooler with drinks in the car. Mm-hmm. So that just took up more space. We would have to bring all the pans,
There was a point where
spans.
we thought we needed another cooler, right? Maybe this was year 2, but we literally had 3 coolers at one point: a drink cooler and 2 condiment coolers. Plus, there's a cooler built into the car. That's usually typically used strictly for meat,
food.
more or less, for food. But we technically go out there at one point with 4 coolers.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about it too. Is like, in addition to that, it's all the chips that we would bring, all of the bread, and just trying to manage that inventory while working our full-time jobs at the same time. So if you flash forward to now, it kind of evolved over time. We do take one car now, like Mike said. We do have a tent, same brand, that is just way better. It's like an aircraft material tent, but it's a 10 by 15 that goes up and down. The wind will definitely still take it down the block, but we have developed better solutions. Like, instead of trying to stake the tent into the ground, which doesn't really work that well, instead of trying to use sandbags to hold it down, we just use a shit ton of bungee cords and we bungee the tent to the fence. So as you can see, it just...
It's an evolution.
Right. Like running any small business, you just have to constantly come up with solutions, and it's a matter of your perseverance to keep on going and keep doing it until things iterate over and over into a better outcome. So now we bungee the tent down. We have walls or tarps that we put up on days that it's rainy or windy. Assuming we're still out there, there are days where we just have to close because it's not worth it. But we bring one car now, cooler of condiments, a cooler of food, which is attached to the cart, and the drink cooler is on the front of the cart now due to some renovations. So we have the drink cooler on the front, packed with drinks, and it also serves as our tongue weight to be able to hitch up to the car and not lose the food cart after you hit a bump, because that tongue weight is going to provide a lot of stability when we're driving. And then we extended our cart by 4 feet due to a local metalsmith, and he was able to supply us with an area to prep our condiments. We have condiment pans now that are 4 inches deep. They last a lot longer than the traditional condiment tray we used to use. We have roll tops to protect that stuff. We basically put ourselves in ability to have more storage. So underneath that new area, we put things like napkins, forks, spare utensils that we might need, cooking oil. We put the chips down there. We put, oven mitts, cleaning rags, sanitizer solution, everything you would need in a restaurant that's ready available to you in your cabinets. We are on the road with that and constantly being cognizant of when that stuff needs to be restocked, organizing it down there so it's not chaotic and a mess, allowing you to just easily open with peace of mind. So yeah, there's just a ton of supplies that you do need to bring to be able to operate as if you were a brick and mortar. And that's kind of the expectation of us now too in year 4.
But yeah, to fast forward though, just to do a quick summary, so everything you said we brought in the first year to what we bring now, all in one car, it's like a puzzle though too, right? Like the backup drinks all get stacked in one area, and then the condiment cooler has to go in a certain place, the tent goes on top of it, everything has to fit in like a puzzle for it to work perfectly, right? All
And
in one car.
If you weren't Mike or you weren't me, you would have no clue how to go out there and open up efficiently.
Right.
Not saying you can hitch something to your car and go out there and great. I mean, you'd go out there, you try your best to sell food, but to get out there in the manner that we do and be able to sell burgers, hot dogs, tom tamales, have chili and cheese, grilled onions, there's just a number of things that we do in a specific way, in a specific order, with a certain process that allows us to be successful. And it's not the same. It's different than having a list on the wall for someone to come in and open up. This is what I have to do to get open.
Yeah, and again, not to say any of this is rocket science, but we put the core thing necessary to serve a Chicago style hot dog. It's not rocket science, but to do it in the manner that we attempt to, when we're not there, you can't tell the cart was ever there. You go there right now, you don't know that that's where we are, right?
Right.
And then when we're there, we have this full setup that's a quasi restaurant. Never mind 4 walls and a roof, though, which we would be open a lot more and more consistently if we had 4 walls and a roof.
Right.
And that's why, to do what we do, right now, if you told us we had to do that 3 years ago in terms of efficiency and getting everything in one car, we wouldn't have known how to do it either. So just to demystify, we're not saying any of it's impossible or hard for someone or any, but we're just saying we're trying to relay what it took over these years to actually, and just to realize you have to step back and take that time to evolve and iterate over what you're doing as a processes, right?
You have to continue to look at what you do over and over again. And I guess that's almost the mindset that you have to have as an entrepreneur too. If you settle for what you do, it's never going to get better. And if you just assume these are the way things are, then you cannot improve and create efficiencies or attempt to grow in terms of personal development, in terms of income, whatever it is. We have to keep revisiting the things we do and decide, is it worth it? Do we need to do it differently? Do we need to buy different equipment to support us? And just keep reiterating over these things along with coming up with new things.
But the quickest example, we bought that. You said we had an $8 tent year one, right? Like it was red, it was nice. But it wasn't great for the wind. It wasn't great for our setup. But for $80, we currently use a $13 tent now, made out of airplane craft material. My point is you could buy 10 of those $8 tents, right, and still be less than them. So why didn't we just say, okay, well, every couple months we'll just buy a new one. It would still be cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't be smart for the business. It wouldn't be effective and all that. But it's something you really have to think about because, like, how easy is it to pull the trigger on a $1,200 tent? It's our workhorse now, but at the moment it was hard,
right.
I think, to say we're going to spend that much money on a tent.
Yeah, almost everything that costs, a solid amount of money, we have to sit down and literally debate and think about the pros and cons of it. And, in hindsight, I'm happy we bought it. But if you were, at the end of the day, it's a tent that you're supposed to use for special occasions, right? It's not meant to go up every day. We're seeing rips in the top here and there.
Wear and tear.
Yeah,
opening and closing.
Yeah, we'll have to replace it at some point. It's not meant to be open every day like it is, but it's something that has literally saved us. It has poured on us. We've had gusts of winds that we just wouldn't have been able to be out there without that tent. People recognize that tent too. That thing can go pretty high in the air. It's a 15 by 10.
You see it from a block away.
They know when we're open. They see that big red tent. They literally tell us that. I was checking to see if I saw the tent.
Right.
So there's a lot of equipment that we've dropped and a lot of equipment that we picked up just to kind of help us in our endeavors.
Right, and I just brought that up just to highlight like business choices and efficiencies, right? Because it's really easy to gloss over stuff and say, well, $80 is less than $1,200, and if you do it several times over, it's still less. But and that tent's not impossible, but it's really difficult to put up by yourself, and it's really difficult even almost sometimes for two people to put it up.
You can open it in under a minute and get it set up,
right.
But if it's one person, it's going to take a few minutes.
Right. And I'm harping on the tent, but it's one of those things I think was one of our smart business decisions. But a quick glance on paper or a 30-second view, you're like, why would you ever spend that much on a tent?
Even as a regular person, someone who has a lot of family gatherings, and by that I mean a few throughout the year outside,
block parties,
that $1,200 tent is so worth it. You're probably getting more bang for it than we are because it's going to last you your entire lifespan.
Right.
Because you're just not opening it up frequently enough for it to deteriorate the way we're experiencing it a little bit. But this is our third year with it, and it's still going to last the whole year. It's still going to last next year if we wanted to.
And this ain't an easy commercial, not sponsored. Just wanted to highlight that, there's worth, some quality decisions are worth it also because we don't get the luxury of just rolling out of a garage or, we don't have that kind of protection. So you have to examine some of those things that are beyond, it takes steam to cook a hot dog and you throw it on a bun, right?
Right. And depending on your setup too with the mobile food cart or mobile food trailer, I mean, it involves physical labor.
Right.
Outside of just steaming a hot dog, like we said, it's easy. Anyone could do it. You could figure it out. But there's physical labor involved. Those coolers get heavy. Like they're probably 100+ pounds.
Yeah.
The drink cooler's definitely heavy. We have to jack up the cart when we get there. When you go to deadlift that with the resistance of the jacks, you're essentially deadlifting a couple 100 pounds. Not that every food cart is that way.
Right.
The way we have ours designed for our setup.
The storage area.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you got to be able
for
to
someone
lift.
to walk up and leans on the cart. That's why you have jacks under. If you come up and lean on the cart, we need to make sure, well, you're not going to, destabilize it while it's cooking, while there's open flames, while there's boiling hot water, and you lean on the cart and it tilts or wants to fall one way or the other, we could have a big problem there.
Right. And that's another thing going off supplies, right? You got to bring propane.
Backup
You got to
propane.
bring backup propane. You have to bring lighters to be able to light the thing up. You got to have potable water, and you got to have water that can go in at the beginning of the spillage pans to get boiling water, and when that water boils out, you need to be able to have more potable water to then add in more water because you need to keep steam going in order to cook your food. And that's the things a lot of people probably don't consider. They're like, oh, they're just steaming hot dogs. It's very true. It's a simple process, but you're mobile. So what do you do if you don't have these things?
Year
You cannot
one, we would
cook.
bring 5 gallons of potable water in a smaller, like Gatorade type cooler, right? In the past 3 years,
We
or
bring
the
10.
past 2 years, and going into this year, we bring 10 gallons of water.
Yep. And then you
But
also
how do you
gotta
get
have
10 gallons of water up to the cart's what, 5 feet off the ground?
Yeah.
4.5 feet. How do you get 10 gallons of water up in the air 4 feet to get into spillage pans, right? Well, that's why we built a pump.
Yep.
And I don't want to put everything here and now, but just I think one of the themes that we keep saying, and this isn't as critical or trying to say, defensively. We don't want to say this defensively that people say we think we're just steaming a hot dog, but we're just trying to give a good view into the whole operation of the business, of everything you have to think of to go out there. You could bring enough water out there that would only last you an hour, right? But we put water in every hour.
Mm-hmm.
To create steam, the water has to boil off.
Yeah, and if you put in too much at once, you lose the steam, and then you have to wait for steam to come.
Right.
We've been in those positions where we lose steam because we put in too much water. Now we have customers waiting in line and waiting for their food.
Right.
So just been a process that you could see firsthand how it relays over, like what you do in the background, the operational aspect. It trickles down to the customer, and you're trying to give them a good experience, an outdoor experience for them to come up, order a hot dog, get a freshly steamed dog on a bun with whatever they want on it, and that could be easily affected by our process on the back end of having water ready, adding a little bit at a time, keeping steam going, and so on. So that's really what we do, is like we try to iterate over and over, because that process might make our life easier, but it's making the experience better for our customers.
We've run out of propane. You literally didn't have a backup on us, and you've had to run to 39th and Ashland just to fill up a propane tank, right? We've run out of the potable water, and you had to run into Armour and fill up the water.
And it's all just trial by fire, just
Right.
learning these things.
The simplest thing of steaming a hot dog quickly goes south when you're just missing the simplest of components.
Right. So having that equipment, having those things, and admittedly, I think to our fault at this moment, we need to create a standard like sheet and operating procedure of these are all the things you need to take out with you. Here's how you can refill them. Here's where you get them. Things like that for us, but also for other people if we ever want to grow like in a manner that allows people to help operate the cart. Like right now, we know off the top of our head everything we need, but it's taken 3-4 years now at this point. But I think we cut it off there. But yeah, that's episode 1. Just a little bit, our origins, a lot of the things that go into operating the cart, a lot of the supplies that we need, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Thanks, guys.